YouTube, it's me, Bergie, and in this video I will be telling you guys the top 5 books I hated that I read this year. It goes without saying that obviously these are my own opinions. If you like these books, good for you. But I just did not, so do not let my thoughts and my ranting infringe on your thoughts on this book and make you feel bad. Because I don't want that to happen, but I personally do not like the books that I'm about to mention and don't understand why they exist. Okay, that's a bit of an overstatement, at least for the lower end of this list, but definitely the first 2 books I do not understand. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So first up, the 5th worst book I read in 2018 was Ink and Bone by Rachel Caine. I decided to pick this book up because I had heard its premise as being a dystopian where the Library of Alexandria still exists. And obviously I was excited by this, but I quickly found myself to be disappointed. First off, it is not a true dystopian, but rather a fantasy novel with truly minor dystopian elements within it. Second, the plot was very unoriginal because it mimicked aspects of Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, and this was also not helped by the fact that the plot and characters were not very intriguing at all. Overall, while disappointed with this book, I am willing to check out the sequel to see if it does get better, because this wasn't awful, hence why it's like on the lower end of this list. It just wasn't as good as I was hoping. In the 4th spot on this list is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I know this is a very unpopular opinion because it's a rather well-loved book on BookTube, but I just found it to be bad. Red Rising is basically just a bloodier, Roman-inspired space version of the Hunger Games. However, I, 1, saw no real reason for the violence or the bloodiness. 2, saw no reason for the Roman connections. There's really no rhyme or reason why it's included. 3, it didn't really feel like a space fiction. Like, the whole space setting was not important to the novel at all, I felt. And finally, it just does not compare at all to the Hunger Games. The characters were really annoying and motivationless, I thought. The plot was unstructured and purposeless, and I just really struggled to get through reading it, let alone enjoying it. I really just do not see myself giving this series another chance, so there's not really any way you can persuade me to. And I feel bad because, again, it is something that is loved by BookTube, but I just don't care for anything about this book, and hence why it's on this list. The 3rd spot goes to A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Again, this is another unpopular opinion here because everyone on BookTube loves V.E. Schwab, but I just don't. This is the 2nd book by her that I had read, and while I didn't like that book, that first book that I read by her, I was hoping that since this was more fantastical that I would enjoy it. But no, that did not happen, obviously. So this follows 2 characters in a world where there are 4 different realms that have their own Londons with varying degrees of magic. And when I heard about this book, this was the only information that was provided, and I thought it was to prevent from spoilers, and really to prevent spoiling like a more interesting and intriguing, deeper plot. But honestly, there is nothing more to the plot. Nothing really happened in this book, and the characters weren't fully fledged enough to make the lack of plot tolerable. I truly have no idea why Schwab is so venerated on BookTube, because her books do absolutely nothing for me, and I really have a hard time seeing why other people like her books. And what's worse is this book was badly written, both stylistically and, what is even more annoying, is editorially/grammatically. There were so many editorial mistakes that to the point that I question whether someone actually copy-read this book. I really just don't want to read any other book in this series, let alone any book that Victoria Schwab has written. she's not for me, and I just don't mesh with it at all. The second book on this list, so my second least favorite book I read in 2018, was The Last 8 by Laura Pohl. This was an arc that I had been given to review, and I chose it because I was in a sci-fi mood and saw that this was being compared to The Fifth Wave, a book that I thought had real potential but fell flat. So I was hoping that this book would kind of be what I was wishing The Fifth Wave would be, but it did not deliver at all. This is a post-apocalyptic novel where basically all of humanity is wiped out except for a handful of teenagers. First off, the main character is very annoying and inconsistent with her personality and actions. Namely, she continuously states that she doesn't care about her ex-boyfriend, but then can't help but mention him. Literally every other word out of her mouth had to do with her ex-boyfriend. Or like she was thinking about him at least once on every page. And that's really annoying, especially when she doesn't care about her boyfriend. And she continuously compares other male characters that she encounters to her ex-boyfriend. So I don't think she's over him, and I think she cared for him a little bit more. Even though she says she doesn't, it's just very inconsistent. The other characters were just as flat and uninteresting, and just, I didn't care about them at all. And as for the plot, there were so many discrepancies, but by far the worst for me was using radiocarbon analysis to date a brick. So if you do not know, radiocarbon dating is a scientific analysis where you are able to get a rough date, usually a span of potential dates for an organic, once living thing. And because of that, you can only date really things that have carbon in them. Bricks don't have carbon in them. I mean, I may be mistaken, and if I am, then my whole dislike for this book decreases quite a bit. But I'm pretty sure I'm right in thinking that you cannot radiocarbon date a brick. There's no carbon in it. The only way you can potentially date a brick is if there is some kind of like carbon organic residue that was left on it, but it was just in a wall, so I don't think there was any carbon to be analyzed. But again, that might be just me getting way too into it, because I learned about radiocarbon dating because of archaeology, and I'm kind of just overthinking it. But anyway, so that really pissed me off, and the fact that the characters nor the plot did anything for me as well just made me really dislike this book, and I totally do not recommend you pick it up when it comes out. I don't know when it does, and I wouldn't recommend you read it. So, before I get into my most hated book that I read in 2018, I want to state some honorable mentions. So one honorable mention that I did not like was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. This was really just a disappointment. I didn't enjoy the writing style, nor the characters, nor the plot, or the commentary on religion. It just had nothing interesting for me, so I didn't like it. Or the only other honorable mention I have are the 3 books in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I just didn't really enjoy these books. The characters were kind of inconsistent, the plot was weirdly paced, and the writing was nothing special. I might continue with the series because the books were comparatively quick to get through, but they aren't really a high priority, so I don't know, it's not going to be anytime soon that I pick them up, if I do decide to pick them up. So, with those out of the way, my book that I read in 2018 that I hated the most was Scorch Atlas by Blake Butler. I picked this up because a coworker of mine recommended it to me, saying it was an interestingly written sci-fi by a very unique and kind of crazy author. So that intrigued me, and I wanted to see what this book was about. But quite quickly, I became confused. There is no purpose behind or within this book at all, unless it is just to purely be grotesque and sickening as possible. I was expecting for the short stories to connect profoundly, or to have this great moral societal critique that would just blow my mind and then make the nastiness I read about mean something powerful. But there was nothing. It was just disgustingness for shock value. And even though this book is extremely short, I feel like it's only 150 pages, if that. It took me way too long to finish. I think it took me over 2 weeks to finish because I just did not want to read it. And I'm not one for DNFing books, but I should have DNF'd this one because it was just awful. It was just really bad. I really just want, or wish I could, remove this reading experience from my mind because it was not worth all the time that I spent reading it. It's just really a bad book, and I do not recommend you read it. Unless you want to see how bad it is, because then you won't be disappointed, because it's just, there's no point to it at all. Or, I don't know, maybe if you know what the point of this book is, please let me know and I'll have an aha moment and this book will no longer be worthy of being the worst book I read in 2018. But yeah, I know I have quite a few controversial opinions in this video. And I apologize if I ripped on your favorite book or a book that you really enjoyed. But we all have differing opinions on books. And it's very petty to get extremely upset when someone has a different view on a book. So, I am still open with discussing the different opinions on these books. But I really do not see how anyone could change my perspective enough to make me want to either continue with the series or reread them to see how they are actually a really good book. But I mean, you can try. I will not fault you for that. Just make sure you do it in a very nice, polite manner. I don't mind if you get a little heated, just don't be rude about it. Because the whole point of this channel is to discuss opinions on books, and there are, of course, going to be times when we don't agree. And honestly, I feel like when there are disagreeing opinions, that is when you can get the best discussions about books out there. So, yeah, I would be willing and open to discussing these books. I want to hear your thoughts. Did you hate them as much as I did, or did you, which is more likely for a lot of these books, enjoy them, and why? I would love to talk to you guys about that down in the comments down below. But anyway, I will see you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now I'll be coming out with something soon, I don't know what, but yes. So yeah, I'm gonna stop my awkward rambling now, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.